Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. We are on the traditional territory of the Okanagan people. We're here in the city of Penticton, and we're talking today about the Christie Mountain wildfire. We'll be giving you a short briefing. We'll hear from a few different guests. Nicole Bonnet will be here from the BC Wildfire Service. We're going to start off with her in just a moment with the latest on this wildfire. We'll then hear from the city of Penticton's mayor, John Vasilaki, and the city manager, Johnny Van Dyke, will also address our audience today. And then we'll hear from Larry Watkinson. He's the fire chief here with the city of Penticton and also involved in structural protection, and he'll talk about the structural protection units that have come into the area. We'll have time for a question and answer session after that. I'd like to remind our media who are here with us to step up to the microphone if you do have a question so our audience at home can hear, and please continue to practice social distancing or physical distancing as we call it as well. We'll also remind you, if you're watching on Facebook, the closed captioning has been enabled, so you'll be able to watch that after this broadcast. A couple of quick notes I want to mention. First of all, my name is Eric Thompson, and I am an information officer with the Regional District of Okanagan Similkameen Emergency Operations Center. For those of you from outside of the area, we cover a very wide area, and inside of that area is municipalities. One of them is the city of Penticton. This Christie Mountain wildfire is bordering both Area D, Electoral Area D, and the city of Penticton. For anyone who is out right now on an evacuation order, there are 319 residences that are out on this evacuation order. We want to remind you that if you haven't yet, you can go to ess.gov.bc.ca to register. We've had a number of people register already, and from what I understand, that number is fairly significant. 2,885. That's 2,885 people have pre-registered with that tool as of August 20th. And the latest numbers from the reception center, we have 161 people have registered at the reception center in Penticton. That's at 199 Ellis Street. 103 have received lodging, and then others, 101 of them, have received billeting with family and friends, and that's part of remaining inside of a family bubble. So, a couple of things to get to very quickly. If you are on evacuation alert, for those residents on evacuation alert, it's important that you consider using that ess.gov.bc.ca tool. There are a few challenges that you'll face, and I feel that we have this forum, we should mention them right now, so for those of you watching across the country, you'll have to bear with us for some of the local details. But when you go into that site, if you don't want your information shared with anyone or collected, you can then go into the reception center. Your information will be kept private. Also, you'll notice there is only one mark that you can put, whether you're an evacuee or not. That's it, it's just evacuee. You'll have to say yes. That's being worked on. The ERA tool will ask a number of different questions. They're all mandatory. Fill them out the best you can. For COVID-19, if you're experiencing symptoms, please don't go to the reception center. What we invite you to do is call into the number. I'll have two numbers for you right now for information about ESS, and then we'll get on with our information from Nicole Bonnet. For the city of Penticton, if you're looking for information about emergency support services, please call 250-490-2345. For the Regional District of Okanagan Similkameen, 250-490-4225. All right, at this point, we'd like to invite Nicole Bonnet to come up and say a few words on behalf of BC Wildfire Service. And again, at the end of our news conference, we'll have time for a question and answer. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So in interest of time, I'll keep this pretty quick and pretty short. We did have the incident management team has fully transitioned as of yesterday evening. What that's going to do is allow the zone to free up some of their own resources and continue to respond to new wildfire starts. We have not updated the size yet from the 2,000 hectares, and we'll likely do that hopefully sometime later on today. With the smoke, it's been a little bit of a challenge visibility-wise to get an accurate track. And we did release on social media last night that we do have additional structure protection strike teams that'll be coming into the area today to do a little bit of triage and initial assessment in some of the evacuation alert areas. And this is just a precautionary measure in the event that we do see some of those 70 gusting winds out of the south that were forecasted for this afternoon. The fire behavior this morning has been fairly quiet, not a lot of open flame, mostly rank 1 with just the wispy smoke that you can see in the air. And I'll turn it over in a little bit, and Larry will talk a little bit more about the structure protection stuff.
All right, thank you very much. That's Nicole Bonnet with BC Wildfire Service. A quick reminder that our evacuation orders right now for the Regional District of Okanagan, Similkameen, 319 properties for Heritage Hills, that is still in effect. The evacuation alerts for the Regional District, 116 civic addresses, that's for Upper Carmi, and also Skaha Bluffs Provincial Park, still in effect. And for the City of Penticton, the evacuation alert remains in effect for 3,669 properties. We've seen some interesting pictures on social media, and they include people mountain biking in the area. Not a good idea. We'd invite you to not do that. It's very dangerous, and we're hoping that everyone will abide by some of those rules that are out there, including avoiding the air traffic if you're out on Skaha Lake. Thank you. We really appreciate it. Now, the Mayor of Penticton, John Vasilaki.
That's a bright light. Thank you very much for having me here today. Good afternoon, everyone. The focus of my comments this afternoon concern what we must do as citizens of Penticton to support our community's emergency response. Should the winds change and should the fire cross into our city limits, we must work together. Today, we are seeing our own city fire trucks along with fire trucks and crews from throughout the region arriving to help protect Penticton homes. While it's natural for us to want to thank those fire crews for their efforts or watch them in action, I want to remind residents and motorists absolutely critical. It is not to obstruct their efforts and to cooperate with any requests they may have. Now is not the time for looky-loos to be out in the community or stop in their cars to look at the fire. I also want to take a moment to thank the hundreds and hundreds of citizens in the evacuation areas who took up our request yesterday to pre-register with emergency support services. You have taken an important step in preparing should an evacuation be required. Finally, I want to remind people to go to the city's website or trusted media channels for current information about our response. Staying informed with current, accurate information about this wildfire is your #1 priority as a resident of Penticton. I want to end by expressing my gratitude for the support we are receiving from all agencies, including the BC Wildfire Service, the RDOS, and Interior Health, as well as from the fire crews from across the region. On behalf of my council and the citizens of Penticton, thank you for your support. Penticton, please be prepared. Please stay safe, and please look out for your neighbors. We must work together. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to introduce my CAO and the men in charge of our Emergency Operations Center. I think this morning the newspaper called them rock stars for all the good information and as often as they put it out to the community so people will be informed. So Mr. Superstar, if you can come forward.
Thank you, Mayor Vasilaki. Just a brief update for you this afternoon. As the mayor mentioned, and Eric on behalf of the regional district, we've had over 1,400 households pre-register for using the evacuee registration and assistance tool. And again, that's at ess.gov.bc.ca. For residents of the city of Penticton or those nearby, our Emergency Operations Center has a call center stood up, and the phone number to reach them again is 250-490-2345. Again, 250-490-2345. Residents will note that there are fire crews from across the valley in Penticton, a lot of different apparatus and personnel. They've also noted that there is apparatus parked in the parking lot at the Adidas Sportsplex, as well as tents in Kings Park Soccer Field. That, of course, is for structural protection efforts and for preparation for structural protection. So we'd ask that residents avoid unnecessary trips to that area. Finally, we'll have the City of Penticton Fire Chief, Larry Watkinson, who is leading the provincial structural protection efforts and will be leading the unified command should the fire enter the City of Penticton. I'll ask Larry if he'd like to share some information on structural protection. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Larry Watkinson, Fire Chief of the City of Penticton. I'd like just to give you an update on the structural protection efforts that we're working on. Right now, I'm integrated to the incident management team with BC Wildfire Service, and my position with them is structural protection. So we've been doing structural protection in the south and now into Penticton. Our efforts have been primarily on just making sure that in the event the fire comes into our community, that we have the appropriate resources to help defend the homes that are directly impacted by the fire. So currently right now we have 110 firefighters from all across the province, approximately 61 fire apparatus that are not Penticton firefighters or apparatus from our jurisdiction. We are working right now with a couple of different divisions, mostly on the Upper East side of the City of Penticton and upwards to Upper Carmi. Working with the incident management team as the fire develops, and if it hits a specific trigger point, we'll be integrating our operations to better serve the citizens of Penticton and Upper Carmi so that we can protect the homes in a more synergized effort. As we move forward, we will continue having these apparatuses in Penticton for the safety of the residents and the protection of their homes until the threat is no longer considered severe. At that time, we'll be releasing those assets provincially back to their home communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just get you to stand by if you could, please. So that's Penticton Fire Chief Larry Watkinson. He's going to start off with our Q&A. So what we'll ask the media to do, if you can, is just maintain your physical distancing. Just step up to the mic one at a time. And what we'll do is, because of the COVID-19 protocols, we're trying to avoid people going back and forth. So we'll have Fire Chief Watkinson up here for about 5 minutes or so, answering as many questions as he can about structural protection. And then at that point, we will then bring Nicole Bonnet up and she'll talk and she'll wrap things up. If we do need to, there may be some time for some one-on-ones, that type of thing. Before I go, I may, if I can, just simply remind you that if you're an evacuee, please be patient. Lots of volunteers working at the ESS Reception Center. They're doing an incredible job, and we do appreciate that. And be prepared. Here's Chief Larry Watkinson. Thank you.
I'm happy to take your questions.
Hi, Chief Watkinson. It's Brady Strachan with CBC Kelowna. The wind obviously has picked up. I'm sure you've seen that. How will that play into the efforts to protect homes today?
Yeah, certainly that's one of the main concerns that we have. The ember transplant is really what we're most concerned about. The area's got some second generation growth as we've had a fire through that area in 1994. So although that has been burnt off already once, there's still significant fuels up there. Our concern is the fuels then carrying through with the wind and then landing into our community, starting spot fires inside the community and then of course igniting structures. So the big thing is we'll be doing tactical patrols through the communities with engines and just making sure that any of those spot fires don't get significant enough to encroach onto the structures themselves.
And do you have the type of hosing that you can set up to put water on particular homes that are at risk? I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So the apparatus that have come across the province is 61 pieces of apparatus, along with the BC Wildfire Service sprinkler protection trailers. We have significant amount of resources. It's certainly, in my opinion, enough resources here to effectively and maintain the integrity of that front. That being said, of course, those situations can change rapidly based on fire behavior, but we feel that we've appropriately resourced this fire as required.
Okay, thank you.
Joe Fries, Penticton Herald.
Hi, Joe.
Chief Watkinson, in your remarks, you referenced a trigger point that would spur you into action. Can you please elaborate on what the trigger point might look like?
Yeah, so yesterday we took a flight with the fire behavior specialist with the incident management team, BC Wildfire Service. In conjunction with them and just general local knowledge, we came up with a specific trigger point that isn't exact. It's going to be in the upper bluffs area. And based on fire behavior and the potential in the fire front and I guess the extreme fire behavior, if it is, then we will have to take into consideration when and how we'll activate that trigger point. But when that trigger point is passed by the fire, working with the incident management team and the incident commander, we will make the determination if we will actually activate the local state of emergency and then do the orders for evacuation at that time.
Nick Johansson, Castanet News. At this time, have structural protection units been placing sprinklers in the alert areas, or is it just more of a monitoring situation right now?
Yeah, so today, part of our tasks and goals is going to be setting up what we call wet lines. So wet lines will be around the perimeter of what is the urban interface, so homes that are directly abutted against the interface wildland. So we're setting up a wet line, which is basically an elaborate sprinkler system that's going to bring the relative humidity up, in a sense, create a humidity bubble in that community. And that will help reduce the ember transplant. So if an ember does land in that area, it won't have the ability to ignite. It'll just fizzle out and hopefully not ignite the brush around the homes.
And what neighborhoods particularly are we talking about here?
Oh boy, we have 3 different divisions, and like I said, it's mostly the eastern end of the upper side of Wilty Bench, Upper Carmi. We're not focusing too much on the Sendero Canyon at this time, but we certainly is in our operational goals if it does extend beyond that.
And have we seen embers fly into these areas yet, or are we monitoring at this time?
I haven't seen any embers that have been active. There's been some ash falling, but it hasn't been anything of concern at this time.
Thank you.
One more for you, Ken. Aaron MacArthur with Global News. You were talking about the trigger point. How much time would you have? How much time would residents have if it reaches that trigger point? Do you have an estimate on that?
Yeah, based on the fire growth expectations, the fire behavior specialist, we feel that we've given enough time, upwards of 4 hours, to do the evacuation based on the growth of the fire potential. So we feel pretty confident that everybody has been given enough time for the alert to be prepared to leave at a moment's notice. And that being said, of course, fire can change very quickly, and if the situation develops rapidly, then we will be making an earlier determination on that trigger point, before the trigger point, or even after the trigger point, depending on fire behavior. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to bring in Nicole Bonnet now to wrap up our question and answer session. And if I could, I'd like to start things off. I just would like you to comment, if you can, on what residents need to keep in mind if they have to leave their property during the day. If, for example, there was an evacuation order issued while they're away from their property. Nicole?
Yeah, so if you are in the evac alert area, we are advising with the RDOS in the city of Penticton that you want to have a bag packed and ready to go. Some of those things maybe you want to just keep in your car in case you do plan to be away from your home for a while. And I know the RDOS and city of Penticton have put out a recommendation that if you can in advance maybe make accommodations if you've got friends or family in the area, but obviously outside of the evac alert area or order area. Get in touch with them and see if you can stay with them and just put some thought into some of that pre-planning. I think that also goes a long way just towards helping with your comfort level, because we do recognize that it is a stressful situation. And I think, just real quick, before I take questions, I do want to throw out there, because I should have mentioned this earlier, we do have a Fires of Note page on the bcwildfireservice.ca website. So we're always updating that with current information as soon as we get it in real time. And for anybody who's watching this on their mobile devices, BC Wildfire Service does have a mobile app now that you can download as well to look up some of this information.
Yesterday, I think you said something about trying to steer the fire into places where you could more easily fight it on your terms, I think you said. How has that been progressing, and what is the terrain like now where the fire is of most concern to you?
The fire, the topography up there is pretty steep, pretty hilly, rocky. There's some little gullies and things like that. So in the areas where there's gullies, if the wind is moving in the same direction, it'll just push the fire up those gullies really quickly and kind of wick up there like a candle, which is actually kind of how the fire started. There's a lot of rock out there, and just because we've had this challenge from the start with finding safe access points for crews and heavy equipment to get in, it's why there largely hasn't been very much heavy equipment on the fire to date. But with the perimeter growth, while that does seem scary, it also is likely that as the fire moves out a little bit, it gives us additional space to look at finding alternative spaces to put crews in on the ground.
Have you had any success since yesterday? I suppose is a better question.
Sorry?
Success since yesterday?
In getting crews on the ground. The crews have...
Containing it or any sort of...
So we're not doing containment numbers anymore. The fire is still classified as out of control. However, we don't want people to be scared by that term. It is not necessarily indicative of what's happening on the ground. I believe we have 132 firefighters on site today with 15 helicopters, and there's additional aerial resources should we need them. And then that number also doesn't include all the structure protection and water tenders and fire department that are out there helping them. So with all those resources, it means we have a lot of eyes on the fire while everybody's working. They're also monitoring the fire behavior and fire activity. And it means we can adjust accordingly pretty quickly as we need to when those winds start to pick up a little more, if they start to pick up a little more.
Joe Fries, Penticton Herald. You talked about the air resources. Can you explain how they are affected by strong winds? Is there a particular wind velocity at which they can't fly?
I'm sure there is, but I actually don't know the answer to that. I'd have to look into that. And
There's a bunch of red shirts and brown shirts in the back of the room. Could someone there answer that question?
that might be a question that Mitch can answer, but if you also send us an email at the end, we can circle back with you on that.
Hi, Nicole. Is there a particular direction you've seen the fire moving this morning with the heavy winds coming through there?
The fire honestly wasn't that active this morning. It's pretty minimal, not a lot of open flame. It's just a lot of wispy smoke. The wind that we were expecting that was forecasted out of the south is majorly the opposite direction of what the wind's done the last couple of days, so it would start pushing the fire more north. It just really depends on what that wind does, and when the wind comes, it will be influenced by the topography on top of the mountain there, so that might impact the direction a little bit as well.
Nicole, if we get to 6 or 7 tonight and the winds die down as forecast and there are no further orders or expansion of the zones, does that mean at that point that people can sort of breathe a sigh of relief? What's your kind of thinking?
I think if we make it through today with the winds being in our favor or just not picking up to quite that same velocity, I think we'll be pretty happy with that. However, this is still a newer incident. We've obviously surpassed the first 24 hours at this point, but fire can be unpredictable just like weather can be unpredictable. So I think in a few more days we'll probably have a little bit better idea. And I think we prefer just to not make any major recommendations so that we're not really jerking people around just because that's just an added stress as well. I think that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We'll wrap it up then. We'll remind anyone watching at home there are some key websites to find information. Of course, you can follow media sources as well, but for direct, timely information about this fire, the Christie Mountain Wildfire, the RDOS website is rdos.bc.ca. You can go directly to the Emergency Operations Center website, emergency.rdos.bc.ca, penticton.ca for information about the city of Penticton, and of course, go directly to BC Wildfire's website for current information. We had some questions about visuals that we don't have with us right now, but on those websites, you'll find the maps and information you need. Thank you very much for joining us here in Penticton, and for those of you at home, have a great day.